Welcome to Harpin on Rugby. Before we focus on Ireland's Six Nations assignment in Edinburgh, we've assembled an all-provincial panel to get an overview of the tournament so far. First, representing Connacht is the owner of the online entity known as the Second Row. He's earning his 11th Harpin cap today. Welcome back to Mr. Pádraig Kelly.
Thank you very much. Great to be back. Always good to chat to you and everyone who you have on with you.
Indeed. And next we have our Munster panelist. He's been doing many articles and interviews on his Quailan Rugby blog. He's making his fourth appearance to our pod. Hello, Mr. Quailan Scully.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Oh, very good. Thanks. Good to have you. And last but certainly not least, we have the host of the Great Red Hand podcast, looking at all things Ulster. Welcome back for the third time to Mr. Peter Lockhart.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Good to be back.
Indeed, good to have you all. Now, listen, this is just an overview of how the Six Nations. I'm calling this the 2 rounds left panel, and it's we're going to look at just basically how the competition's gone so far and how we think it's going to pan out over the coming weeks. So we'll maybe just start with yourself, Pádraig. Just maybe want to harp on a bit about basically Ireland's matches so far.
It's been a great tournament so far from an Irish perspective. Actually, it's been a great tournament so far. I think some of the best rugby in the Six Nations ever has been played this year. Like if you take the Wales-England match and push it to one side and shove it far, far, far away from that list. But some of the rugby has been incredible. Like I think if from an Irish perspective, if you look at the Wales match, I think that was kind of a business as usual, expected to win, especially given the situation in Wales in every single facet of Welsh rugby. There's no way they could have put a good, strong performance together. The France game, I called that chess boxing. The first half of 2 teams just slugging it out, going try for try. And then the second half, like, all right, sit down, play the percentages, and all the tactical nous of both teams came. And it was just an incredible, incredible watch. But what I really liked about that game, especially, is that Ireland showed what we can do. We have a plan A, B, C, D. We have so many strings to our bow now. The pack, without Tadhg Furlong especially, had a gear that no one really thought this pack had against what is a very big French team. Now, I don't think France played their best. I think they're at a bit of having a wobble. And I think they're trying to do an Eddie Jones of add in a few extra strings to their bow before the World Cup. And I think that's where a lot of these things, especially French this year, I think their eyes are on the World Cup, not this Six Nations, but I think you still have to beat them. And we bet them well for me. And like in those first 2 games, the pack delivered. We're seeing guys like Keenan just prove how world class he is. I'm enjoying Conor Murray's resurgence in an Ireland jersey. It's been a while since he played that well. And if we look at the Italy match and, Mac Hansen getting his player of the match, he's showing that rugby brain he has more and more, or more people are seeing it. His put himself in those positions for intercepts, his defensive, his ball running, all those type of things. And I think Stuart McCluskey has shown what Ireland's strength and depth is like throughout this tournament. He's like the beacon of what that next layer or 2 down of what the level of performance they need is. So it's been a really, really good tournament so far. I've enjoyed the rugby. I've enjoyed watching Ireland. I think the only blip we've really had has been Bundy shifting to 13 against Italy. And I think you have to have the caveat of he didn't train there that week in any way, shape or form. And he hasn't played a full game from the beginning in 3 months, so if you put those factors into it, obviously he wasn't going to have a great game. And I think you have to caveat his performance with that. Otherwise, you're just out with a knife. You're just knives out, ready to kind of just take a guy down for no reason. Ringrose will come back in next week against Scotland, and we'll see why straight away.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overriding theme of these matches, and indeed, like maybe the last year or so of Andy Farrell's tenure, has been the difference between the natural trepidation and fear that we have as fans. We're always worried, well, no matter who we're playing, we always have expectations, and we might be worried, oh, this guy's injured. Do we have the depth? What are our combinations like? And we were missing a lot of what we consider frontline players going into this Six Nations, but whatever trepidations we had, it wasn't being shown by the team. And when they click in, like you say, Conor Murray, like we know what he can do. He came in and he played his game and he ran the game the way he wanted. But he's a different kind of player to Gibson Park. But still, you didn't notice. The game was still the team was still playing the way they did, and they knew what they were doing. How have you made it so far, Kyron?
I've thoroughly enjoyed the tournament. I think, like from a broad view of things, I think we're in a weird scenario for a World Cup year. We don't really know where any team is, probably apart from Ireland. And even with that, I don't think Ireland have peaked or even come close to peaking. That's obviously a buzzword on a World Cup year. But I just look at, as you said, no Johnny Sexton, Ty Byrne, like Furlong, Robbie Henshaw, Gary Ringrose, these guys, Jemison Gibson Park, missing at different stages, and we're still 3 from 3. You look at across the board, every team has had some sort of not fatal flaw, because obviously the tournament is still wide open. But there's lots of question marks about England, there's lots of question marks about Scotland, and Finn usually gets the brunt of those, rightly or wrongly, depending on what side of that you are. And obviously France haven't been as good as last year, but would you be surprised if they roll into Twickenham on Saturday afternoon and win? You wouldn't, even if it's something like 15 or 16 years since they've won there. But drawing it back to Ireland, I've been really impressed, more so than in the autumn, because I think coming into it, there's obviously the scar tissue of 2019 and 2015, but straight away having injuries brings you back, and you're just thinking, well, that's what derailed us in those years as well. It was injuries as much as form. It was injuries. No Ty Furlong, Johnny Sexton, we don't know if he'll make the Wales game, and they go out and they blitz Wales, and it's like the summer New Zealand again. They just blitz teams at the start. You look at France, and that was one of the greatest first halves of rugby, as Park was alluding to, and then not only a great first half, but a really smart tactical affair in the second half that was utterly enjoyable. But like, you look at who was putting their hands up, it's Caelan Doris, it's Hugo Keenan, it's Mac Hansen, James Lowe, guys who were not there 3-4 years ago. We didn't really know about them. We knew about them obviously as provincial fans, but we didn't know about their international pedigree, and they've stood up and they're getting going. They're really starting to motor now. And I do think, like, I didn't think there was in Ireland this year. I thought they'd come unstuck somewhere along the line. They could still on Sunday. The nerves will shoot up come 3 o'clock on Sunday, I think, between us and between everyone listening. But there is a in this team. There is a World Cup push in this team, and to think that after all the injuries and slight questions about form after that Australia game, I think that's all you can ask for. And Andy Farrell talks about adversity. You lose Gary Ringrose before the Italy game. You lose Ty Byrne and Johnny Sexton within 5 minutes of each other against France. The bus is late in Cardiff. You lose Johnny Sexton against Australia. They lose Ty Furlong against South Africa. They won all those games. You simply cannot ask for anything else. So I'm happy with how it's gone so far.
Yep, definitely. Just when you listen back to this, to sort of warn you that I'm gonna bleep out the GS phrase that you used there. It's a little joke we have in the pod there. We have it banned. But I didn't say that, but it's just a bit of a laugh. But if you're wondering what the buzzer noise is, that's what it's going to be. Peter, how have you seen it so far?
Yeah, so to me, this Six Nations for Ireland has all been about understudies and their importance to the Irish team. So depth chart is one of the most used phrases in Irish rugby at the minute, and for good reason. Everyone's thinking about the depth chart. We're looking around at other teams, and this Six Nations has been very helpful because it has enforced certain changes, and certain guys, it has allowed them to step up. I think the pick of the bunch is Finlay Bealham. and I'm sure certain panelists will be delighted at me saying that. But Beelham's an obvious person to pick on because he's been so good. And I always rated Beelham. I thought he was a good player, but I thought the drop off between Furlong and him was massive. And that is not no reflection on Beelham. It's more reflection how good Furlong is. But Beelham's been really good, and sometimes injury enforces these changes, and then guys step up. You either sink or swim, and Beelham has been fantastic. And ironically, I think that the sort of next pick of the bunch is Beelham's understudy and Tom O'Toole. And I always would have said, to be honest, I think O'Toole has a higher ceiling than Beelham, but Tom O'Toole for Ulster hasn't really kicked the head. Part of that is the magnificent form of Marty Moore at Ulster before he got a season-ending injury there about a month ago. So for a man who struggles to get in the Ulster team, and probably truthfully will probably still struggle to get into the Ulster team with the rise and prominence of Jeff Tamaga Allen, who's joined us this season. It says a lot to me about Farrell as a coach, and he brings out the best in players. And he's certainly done that for Tom O'Toole, and there's other guys there as well. And I notice it more from an Ulster perspective. Guys who are average at Ulster, or maybe not anything special, they go away and they turn into superstars for Ireland. The other guys, talking of understudies, Ronan Kelleher, again, he's a guy who burst onto the scene. He was number one. It was then sort of injury that allowed Shane. He's a guy who took his opportunity with both hands. And you'd have to say Shane is probably the best hooker in the world right now. I don't think there's a huge amount of debate about that. But Ronan Kelleher's really stepped up as well. And our stocks at tight head and hooker are really strong. Now, there's certain parts of the team where that isn't the case, but again, we can talk about that later on in the podcast. But Ross Byrne, again, I'd been, and no offense, Jeff, because I know you're a Leinster fan, but I'd been a wee bit uninspired by Ross Byrne. Sort of don't see him as or certainly previously I hadn't seen him as a massively inspiring choice if Sexton were to get injured. But now I'm much more confident that he can come in and do a job, and not just do a job, but he's any chance he's given, he hasn't disappointed, and it's great to see. I'll not go through all the guys, but Conor Murray, Craig Casey, people are eager to write Conor Murray off for whatever reason. I think there's always a call from certain sections of fans to have a changing of the guard. Conor Murray's viewed as sort of past his best or whatever. Conor Murray's, and I think that's partly because he was one of the best scrum halves in his peak in the world, sort of 2018, 2019. Conor Murray was fantastic, but him and Craig Casey, have to say. Another one would be Ryan Bird, a great player, hybrid sort of six. I think he's best at six certainly, but he adds real depth and competition for places there in the back row. So look, I think it is good. One of the things I sort of noticed this week, and I try and do this, is get outside of the Irish rugby bubble and look at what the rest of the world is saying about Ireland during this Six Nations. And I think the chat is basically from the Southern Hemisphere, so the press in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, they're talking about Ireland and France surpassing now the Southern Hemisphere teams. That's the real fear for them, that Ireland and France are just a level above now. The headline in one of the sort of French national newspapers was "The King of the World is Irish." And the sort of, made a wee note of part of the article. They say, over the course of a magnificent match, this is just after the France game, of course, the Irish have proven they're today the best rugby players in the world, courageous, les Bleus, therefore logically fell in Dublin. We quickly understood on Saturday we are living in a great moment of rugby. So the French press see this Irish team as special, and certainly the starting 15 is, but more encouragingly, it's been the guys who have stepped up, and that list of guys is talking about we have able deputies, but in our starting 15 we have maybe 3 or 4 of the best players in the world in their position. I'd say Keenan, Van der Fleer, Doris, Shane, Sexton, Those are probably, you know, ring. You could argue Ringrose, Henshaw, and with a lot of injuries, I've been really encouraged by this Six Nations. So I'll not go on, but that's I just think it's great, and we shouldn't take this moment for granted in Irish rugby, because it's something special is brewing at the minute.
Absolutely. I mean, on the depth, I mean, it's like when you win a series in New Zealand, it'd be easy for people to go, right, that's the team, they're the guys, that's it, nothing else but them is going to do it. But I mean, you look at that series and you figure, like, someone like James Hume and people we were talking about then, and I distinctly remember saying, we've got Ringrose, Henshaw, Hume, and Aki. That's it, 4 centers. That's it. And then we weren't talking about Stu McCluskey. And look, here he is back in team, and sure, Luke Marshall isn't far away either. Do you know what I mean? It's amazing the depth we've seen at all the different positions. So that's great. And on Ross Byrne, you didn't offend me at all, because I know exactly what you mean. I used to say that he's a driver of a different type of car, but he was always driving Sexton's car. And if he'd come up in the Premiership or something, or in a different place where he could have a team built around him for his style of game, he'd be a different player now. But it's just, he's gotten to the stage now where he spent his career being able to come on for Sexton and take his place and run that team. I think that has stood to him at a time when maybe other alternatives just haven't worked out, or they've been injured or whatever. He just, I guess, was in the right place at the right time. But you're right, across all the positions. Even tight head, which was one where we thought we just had one gem, like you say, and nothing else after it. We've been able to find players that can get it done, you know.